a lot of the Bible is God telling people how they've done something wrong. And a lot of people, honestly, when they read the Bible, get kind of turned off by that. They get disturbed by that. And they say things like, man, what does God have the right to say? What's right and what's wrong anyway? This is not a new phenomenon. This is not a new mentality people have where people say, like there's no such thing as right and wrong. And who has the right to say what's right and wrong anyways? Actually, in the book of Malachi, there's two statements. In a book that's chock full of descriptions of people doing things that God says are wicked. People who are divorcing their spouses for no good reason, people, or for whatever reason they think, I should say, people who are being unjust, people who are oppressing the poor, people who are stealing, people who are just arrogant and terrible in all these kinds of ways, terrible by God's standards. But again, someone would say, who says that stuff is terrible? Well, look at a couple of statements where God speaks in very contemporary language to what we hear a lot of times in our culture and in our day, and maybe we even say in our own hearts personally. Listen to what is said in Malachi chapter 2 and verse 17. It says, you have wearied the Lord with your words. Yet you say, how have we wearied him? It's in that you say, everyone who does evil is good in the sight of the Lord, and he delights in them. In other words, there are people who are saying like, God loves you anyways. Whatever you do, whatever bad you've done, it's no big deal. God delights even in people who do evil. Which, by the way, God has said a lot of times throughout history, it's not the case. But people say that it's the case. Here's another one in Malachi chapter 3 and verse 15. It says, so now we call the arrogant blessed. Not only are the doers of wickedness built up, or in other words, elevated in society, but they also test God or disrespect God, and they escape. You see, the idea that there is no such thing as right and wrong, or we get to determine what's right and wrong, or different mentalities like that, they're not new things. They're not postmodern Western ideas. They're just ideas that human beings have had for centuries. Now, you may be sitting there saying, yeah, I think that's right. You may be watching this video because a friend of yours shared this with you and said, hey, I think you should think about this. And you might be saying, yeah, I think that's right. I think everybody gets the right to determine their own morality. What right does a holy book, so-called, or a God, if there even is one out there, or religious people, what right do they have to claim that there is such a thing as right and wrong, or good or evil? What right do they have to condemn or to judge? We'll say those kinds of things, right? Well, so what I want to do is just show you a bunch of Bible verses. But probably you're sitting there saying, well, I don't believe in the Bible anyways, so that doesn't really make much sense to me. So fair enough. Why don't we start somewhere else that might just spark a little something for you to consider and further pursue in your own thoughts and your own consideration. Have you ever said that anyone did something wrong? What about that guy at work who lied about you and cheated you and took the job that was rightfully yours? How'd you respond to that? Did you say, well, that's just the way it is? Or were you angry about that? Were you disturbed that such a terrible thing could happen? What about whenever you watch the news and you hear about some kid being abused, or a woman being beaten by her husband, or corporate tycoons who are stealing from their investors or from the people below them? Whenever you hear about news stories like that, how do you respond? You say, hey, that's good. Good for them. They had the ability to take advantage of a situation, so they did. And you know what? That kid or that woman or those people in that business, they'll learn from it and they'll do better next time. I hope not. And I think if you're honest, you don't feel that way. Or if you do feel that way, you're suppressing something within yourself where you know there are some things that are just wrong. And so actually the claim to say, who has the right to say what's right and wrong, or who even says there is such a thing as right and wrong and good and evil? Well, every human being that exists. That's what sets us apart from animals. Animals don't have law courts. They don't set up judges. They don't cry out whenever there's all kinds of injustice done toward the minority group among their species. They don't do that because they're not like us, because something is different about us. We were made with a sense of ought, of right and wrong and good and evil. Now, we may disagree on the particulars of it, but at least we know there is such a thing as right and wrong, and there's bad things that happen and they shouldn't be done, and somebody should do something to rectify them. Now, here's the claim that I'm going to make to you. The reason that we have that as human beings is because someone put it there. Someone put us here and they put that thought within us to stir up within us the pursuit of something better than the animals, something better than nature, something better than what we so often see amongst ourselves in the human race. And I believe that someone is God, that he made us in his image, and he set up expectations. And therefore, the only way for us to satisfy that longing for justice, for rightness, for goodness in the world, the only way to satisfy that is to listen to him, to pay attention to what he said, to obey him, so that we'll no longer keep calling evil things good in the world, so that we'll no longer bless the arrogant and the wicked and the oppressors, but instead there will be true justice and righteousness in a world ruled by the God who made us.